Hello one and all, Jasper here and welcome back to the 6th installment of me nitpicking and pointing out all the changes that were made from the books of Fire and Blood. Naturally, spoilers ahead for not just these episodes, but possibly future episodes. While each episode has had a time skip, this episode so far has had the largest time skip. Since technically everything that happened off-screen could be 100% accurate, I will not be commenting on it at all unless there is an obvious contradiction. If you're interested in more details, then go read the book. I'm just here to talk about changes. We start with Rhaenyra giving birth to her third kid, and when summoned by the Queen, Laenor pops up to escort her. Which is odd that he was not present in the room while she was delivering, as it was mentioned that he stood by her side along with Sir Harwin Strong while she was in labor. So neither being there is finicky, but at least Laenor was nearby. This has nothing to do with really judging it as an adaptation per se, but thank God the new actor for Laenor can act! Also, we get about 3 minutes of a completely uncut scene. I always love it when movies and shows do this. Now, we get to see Viserys and Jesus Christ! My man looks like he would be more at home in the cast of Walking Dead rather than Game of Thrones. Maybe we should kick him over the wall so he could be with the Night King. Viserys did become noticeably unwell as he aged, but never to the level of losing an arm or having a skin condition that made him look like a burn victim. Skipping past only a single scene as nothing is contradictive in it, we get to a Dragonpit. We see 4 young lads, 2 of Alicent's kids, Aegon and Aemon, the ones with silver hair, and 2 brown-headed bastards, Jacaerys and Lucerys. However, there is one missing child, Daemon Targaryen, a son of Queen Alicent who would be the same age as Jacaerys. He makes no appearance in this episode, and I don't recall hearing of an actor being cast for him, so he's likely cut from the story at all, which is a shame. We see Jacaerys struggling to command his dragon, and the old dragon keeper instructs him. Here's the weird thing though. There is a fucking translator. A man unable to speak the common tongue in King's Landing is odd enough, but it is equally odd that Jacaerys needs someone to translate what he is saying. He should probably be able to speak High Valyrian like his mother. Jumping ahead, we see Alicent speaking with whom I assume is Laena, who is not nearly plump enough. Someone get this bitch some donuts. Right after that, we have Alicent talking to Viserys and pretty much saying flat out, those grandkids of his are bastards. Viserys of course doesn't believe this, which makes him look like a complete idiot. In the books, it was reasonable for him to think the brown hair and eyes wasn't an issue since their grandmother had brown hair. However, there is a show change that makes this so obvious that they are bastards. I won't go into detail, but I will show you these 3 images on the screen, and I trust that you can figure it out. After all, you're all very clever. Jumping ahead a few scenes, we get the what the actual fuck? What the? Who? Why? I have no idea where they got this from. Aegon was a bit of a drinker, a partier, and I do think there was some mention of him being a bit of a playboy, but I don't think any of that explains why the hell he is jerking it while standing on the edge of a window. Does he get off on the risk of getting caught or falling? I don't know, but this shit is weird, and I am now officially Team Extra Black. Moving along, we get to see Daemon and his new wife Laena flying around Pentos, and having a little feast after. It was at this moment we see that she is pregnant and has 2 twin daughters. These kids were actually born in Pentos, however after said births, she would return to Driftmark, and it would be at Driftmark her 3rd child would be born. That's right, born. Oh, don't worry, I'll get to that. However, that does mean that technically any scene where she is in Pentos with Daemon is an inaccuracy. Now, when we get to the training yard scene, we see the Valyrian kids and the obvious bastards training together under the tutelage of Criston Cole. This is unlikely. I mean, think about it. Do you think that Rhaenyra would actually be okay with Criston being in charge of her kids' training? This would be handled by the Master-at-Arms, who would be far less biased in such training. This eventually leads to a skirmish between Harwin Strong and Criston Cole. However, Harwin beats the piss out of the Kingsguard. This never happened. Well, not really. The two did fight, but it was during a tourney. Remember in the last episode when I mentioned the way Criston killed Joffrey was during a tourney? Well, during the same tourney, Harwin and Criston did fight, but it was quite one-sided as Criston broke Harwin's collarbone. This leads to Harwin being removed from his position in the Gold Cloaks, which is bullshit. Criston beats a man to death and bitch slaps the future king and gets off scot-free. Harwin has a little bit of a scuffle and loses his job. This is some grade A poppycock. Harwin was eventually removed as Rhaenyra's sworn shield and a member of the Goldcloaks, but it was not due to an altercation with Criston. It was brought about after an event between the kids that resulted in Aemon losing his eye, which means that not only was Harwin's dismissal moved up significantly, but also his death and the death of his father. But we can talk about that later. Getting back to the show, we get a scene between a rather drunk Laenor and pissed Rhaenyra. As mentioned before, show Laenor seems to be a bit more masculine and macho compared to his book counterpart, and also a more dutiful husband, as in the books, Laenor was rarely around in King's Landing, spending most of his time at Driftmark, and only appearing when it was expected of him. The show seems to paint a picture that since the marriage, he's been living in King's Landing with his wife. We then get a small council meeting where we talk about the Brackens and the Blackwoods hating each other. Accurate. What isn't is when Rhaenyra goes into her tirade about how no troops were left to hold the islands. There were, as Daemon was king of the Stepstones, though granted he abandoned the land after he was married to Laena Velaryon. Though even then the men were still there, and just followed 5 different kings until they were crushed by the Triarchy and Dorne. Though they are being pretty vague on what the issue is with the Stepstones, so maybe I'm just complaining when I don't need to. But isn't that what this series is about? Also, pause right here. Graham McTavish, aka Sir Harold Westerling. Remember how I mentioned that Criston should have been Lord Commander by the previous episode? Well, Harold here should definitely be dead, and Criston would be named as his replacement, and this point, it makes me wonder what plans they have for him, as Graham McTavish is a reasonably big actor, solid B-list, so I imagine they might change how his character dies rather than of old age or off-screen like what happens in the book. We then see Lyonel Strong trying to submit his notice of resignation to Viserys due to his son Harwin attacking Criston. Since no fight took place, Lyonel never made an attempt to resign. And now we are at this scene. I swear to God, for the most part every single episode is good, but they always have at least one fucking scene that gives off the same stench as Season 8. Only episode 4 doesn't have such a moment, and I didn't even care for that episode that much. Either way, we see Laena giving birth, but there is an issue. The baby is stuck, and so the doctor here suggests cutting out the child just like what happened with Aemma Arryn back in episode 1. But this has one big difference. This woman, who is clearly in a lot of pain and screaming, hears the two talking about the possible C-section, and in this state, walks out of the building, completely giving Daemon the slip. Luckily for her, she didn't leave a trail of blood as Rhaenyra did, makes it to Vhagar, and commands the beast to burn her and the child inside her alive. What the actual fuck? I heard about the leaks, but I didn't believe them. Or perhaps I didn't want to. In the books, she gives birth to her first son. However, it's twisted and deformed and dies soon after. Laena would follow 3 days later, collapsing as she tried to ride Vhagar one last time. I'm not going to pretend that the original was a magnum opus of writing, but it was 7 hells above whatever this shit is. Let's get to a scene that doesn't give me an aneurysm. We got Rhaenyra telling Laenor it's time to move to Dragonstone. 2 key things. The big event that resulted in Aemon losing his eye was a key reason why Rhaenyra and her supporters would move to Dragonstone. Not to mention, while at Dragonstone, she became close friends with Laena, and the two would often visit each other due to how close Dragonstone and Driftmark are. Guess we're not getting that friendship, huh? And to end it all out, we have the burning of Harrenhal, resulting in Lyonel and Harwin Strong dying, and it was all set up by Larys Strong. This is accurate in that Larys is one of the suspects to be responsible for this. Other theories involve Corlys Velaryon, who wanted to kill the man who had been cucking his son, Daemon Targaryen, who wished to kill a rival in the affection of Rhaenyra, Viserys, who actually did believe the rumors in secret about his grandkids being bastards and wanted to kill the man who dishonored his family. The Curse of Harrenhal is one more popularized by the Smallfolk, as well as it just being an accident. My personal choice was Larys Strong being the one responsible, as it made the most sense. He gained the most from the outcome compared to anyone else, and all other suspects would likely only gun for Harwin rather than both Harwin and Lyonel, so I'm glad they went with Larys. I do wish there was a bit more setup for it, but for now I think the generic want for power and influence is reason enough, given that these are side characters. And now, a final mention, and this is a big one, so get ready. Leonor Valerion should be dead. At least in the books, he dies not long after his sister perishes, and most definitely a good long while before the Strongs die. So he is lucky he's still walking about, but it ain't gonna be long lasting. I'm looking forward to how they will handle it because, like the Strongs, there are a few options to go with in who's the cause of his death. And if my calculations are correct, he's likely to die in the very next episode. And there we go, all the changes that I noticed in this episode. But I'm sure there are many that I missed. If you know one, feel free to mention it in the comments below. But with that squared away, it's 2 in the morning for me and I need to get some sleep. Stay safe, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.